minute. If you lost your memory, how did you remember that I bought a car? You didn't even know who I was.
The television is bringing it all back to me now. What's the matter?
Let me at her. Tell me Let me at her.
Donna.
Let me at her. Her behind is mine.
He said, then you don't know. Red had a full page, a front page on Variety said that this is it. He's not going to do it after this season. He's quitting. And I was wounded.
In 1972, Sanford and Son hit America's TV screens, instantly changing sitcom history. But hidden in that very first season is a scene Demon Wilson still refuses to watch. Red Fox's sharp-tongued Fred Sanford and Wilson's Lamont became household names almost overnight.
But in 1972, you played a major role on Sanford and Son. Can you?
Well, you got it backwards. You got it backwards because it was those TV shows, and then there was.
Yet behind the laughter was tension. For Wilson, there was something far more unsettling.
Felt like I'm a good actor, so my face didn't break, but I felt like a woman who had just been told that her husband was cheating on her with one of her friends.
Decades later, he admits there are moments from the show he'll never revisit. The question is, what happened in 1972 that still haunts him? Let's find out. Demon Wilson wasn't born into Hollywood. He was born in Valdosta, Georgia in 1946 and grew up in New York City. Life wasn't easy, but he carried a deep love for performing. As a child, he even trained in ballet and tap dance, performing on stage at the Apollo Theater in Harlem. That early exposure planted a seed that would later grow into his television career.
I started as a dancer, so I didn't really have a choice. They put me into it. I wanted to be a normal kid, ride my bike, play baseball, basketball, was it.
By the late 1960s, Wilson had served in the U.S. Army during the Vietnam War. Coming home from combat, he returned determined to pursue acting full-time. The odds were against him. Hollywood wasn't exactly known for giving big roles to young black actors in those days, but Wilson refused to give up. He started with minor appearances on shows like Mission Impossible and All in the Family, slowly building his resume.
So that's how we met Demond Wilson.
Now, that was quite a departure. There wasn't much precedent for two black men to be starring in a primetime network television series.
Everything changed in 1971. Norman Lear, already a powerhouse in television, was producing a new show for NBC. It was based on a British comedy called Steptoe and Son, but Lear wanted to adapt it for American audiences, setting it in Watts, Los Angeles. The result was Sanford and Son. Producers needed the perfect duo, a sharp-witted father and his exasperated son. Red Foxx, already a famous comedian known for his raunchy stand-up routines, was cast as Fred Sanford. But finding Lamont was tougher. Dozens of young actors tested, yet something about Demon Wilson stood out. His timing, his ability to balance frustration with genuine care, and the natural chemistry he had with Foxx made him the clear choice.
In answer to that, the man's a clown. Yeah. He didn't have to be scatological to be funny. He thought so.
What about Demond Wilson? Where did you find him?
Demond Wilson was on an All in the Family show.
In January 1972, Sanford and Son premiered. Within weeks, it was pulling in millions of viewers every Friday night. Demon Wilson, at only 25 years old, was suddenly a national name. He had gone from a struggling actor to one of the most recognized faces on television. The role of Lamont Sanford gave him steady work, fame, and a chance to showcase his talent. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Wilson later admitted that, even from the beginning, he had mixed feelings. He was grateful for the job and the recognition, but he also felt uneasy with how some of the scripts were written. Much of the writing staff was white and came from backgrounds far removed from the black experience in Watts. Sometimes, Wilson felt that the jokes leaned more towards stereotype than truth.
Red and I were just two actors thrown together. The thing that we had in common was that we were not going to take any BS from anybody, black, white, Asian, or Hispanic.
Still, In those early days, Wilson pressed forward. He wanted to make the most of this opportunity. He and Red Fox worked tirelessly, often improvising lines to bring authenticity to their characters. The chemistry between them was electric, so much so that audiences believed they really were father and son. For Wilson, this was the beginning of both his greatest success and some of his deepest frustrations. He had stepped into the spotlight, but it came with shadows he couldn't ignore. And by the end of that very first year, there would be one particular scene he filmed that he would never watch again. By the spring of 1972, Sanford and Son was more than just another sitcom. It was a cultural event. Friday nights on NBC belonged to Fred and Lamont Sanford, and households across America tuned in to watch the father and son spar inside their cluttered Los Angeles junkyard. The laughter was loud, the lines were sharp, and the chemistry between Red Fox and Demon Wilson carried the show.
How about that, Pop? $1,500, and all we got to do is go to St. Louis and pick it up, man. I can't believe it.
Me either. Left me all that money, and I haven't seen Uncle Ulysses in 30 years.
What set Sanford and Son apart was its focus on a black family at a time when network television offered very few shows led by African-American actors. Just 3 years earlier, Julia with Deahan Carroll had been one of the only major network series centered on a black character. Now, NBC was betting big on Fox and Wilson to bring something fresh, and it worked. Within months, the series was pulling ratings that rivaled All in the Family, the #1 show at the time. The storylines usually revolved around Fred Sanford's wild schemes and Lamont's attempts to bring some order to their lives. Audiences laughed at Fred's fake heart attacks, his famous "This is the big one, Elizabeth," and Lamont's constant eye rolls at his father's antics. The formula was simple but effective. It made Fox and Wilson household names almost overnight.
Oh, this is a big one. Is that Elizabeth?
But as groundbreaking as the show was, there was another side to it. Many of the scripts were written by white writers who had little connection to life in Watts, Los Angeles. The result was that while the show broke barriers, it also sometimes relied on jokes that leaned into stereotypes. Fred Sanford was often shown as lazy or scheming, while Lamont could come off as gullible or constantly frustrated. Demon Wilson later admitted he wasn't always comfortable with these portrayals. He believed the show could have leaned more into authenticity, real stories from black communities, rather than chasing laughs at the expense of realism. To him, some of the humor felt exaggerated in ways that didn't reflect the true black experience. Still, for many viewers at the time, Sanford and Son was a step forward. It showed a black father and son leading their own sitcom, something rarely seen on network television. And while not every storyline was perfect, the visibility it gave to black actors was undeniable. Fred and Lamont Sanford were front and center week after week, commanding primetime television. The chemistry between Wilson and Fox was what truly anchored the show. Behind the scenes, they didn't always agree, but on camera, their timing was flawless. Their back-and-forth banter gave the series life, making the junkyard setting feel like a stage where two strong personalities collided. For Wilson, though, the success came with unease. He understood the impact the show was having, but he also recognized its flaws. The tension between breaking barriers and reinforcing stereotypes weighed on him. And it was in the middle of that very first year, 1972, that he found himself performing a scene that clashed deeply with his personal values, one he still refuses to revisit today. From the outside, Sanford and Son looked like nothing but laughs, but Demon Wilson remembers the first season very differently. In 1972, he filmed scenes that left him feeling uneasy, not because of nerves, but because of what the scripts were asking him to do. Much of the writing came from white producers and writers who had little connection to the life of black families in Los Angeles. They were focused on jokes, punchlines, and exaggerated stereotypes that made audiences laugh, but didn't always reflect reality. Wilson was proud of playing Lamont Sanford, but sometimes he felt like the character was being written more as a joke than as a real person. One particular episode from that first season pushed him past the line. Wilson has never publicly named the exact script, but he admitted in interviews that there are moments from 1972 that he will never sit through again. He described them as scenes that went against his personal values, things that made him feel as though his character was being stripped of authenticity. Wilson has described feeling trapped between the role he loved and the words he was asked to speak. Every line that exaggerated a stereotype felt like a betrayal of the community he grew up in, and yet refusing them could have meant losing his job, his visibility, and the career he had worked so hard to build. He often tried subtle improvisations, adjusting phrasing or tone, but not all suggestions were welcomed by the writers or producers. The struggle was constant, performing in a way that entertained millions while staying true to his own moral compass. It was a balancing act he would carry with him for years, a silent weight behind the laughter that viewers never saw. In some of those scenes, Lamont was portrayed in ways that Wilson felt leaned too far into stereotype, either looking foolish, naive, or acting in ways that didn't match the real struggles of young black men in Watts. For Wilson, it wasn't just acting, it was a representation of his community, his people, and his own lived experience. He loved authenticity, and seeing those elements turned into comedy left him with a bitter taste.
Somebody said, what separated your show from the others? I said, we weren't homogenized. At the end of the series, it said, Sanford and Son is recorded before a live studio audience.
He later admitted that when he looks back on those early days, he refuses to revisit certain episodes. He avoids watching them not out of embarrassment, but because he does not want to relive the discomfort of being forced into a scene that clashed with his personal truth. To him, those moments represent Hollywood's tendency in the 1970s to prioritize laughs over authenticity. The pain for Wilson was that the show had such potential. Millions of people were watching every week, and he believed it could have painted a truer picture of black life. Instead, certain jokes felt like they were written for laughs at the expense of dignity. That's why, even decades later, he won't look back. When asked in later interviews why he avoids those scenes, Wilson didn't hold back. He spoke about scripts being written by people who had no idea what it was like for us in Watts. He stressed that the discomfort wasn't about Red Fox or their performances. It was about the words on the page. For Wilson, the problem wasn't only personal. He saw the broader picture. Television in the early 1970s was shaping how millions of viewers understood black families, and he believed that some of those moments painted the wrong picture. That's why those 1972 scenes stand out in his memory, and why he will not watch them again.
And it's remarkable because in my show business days, early studio days in Sanford and Son, I walked around with this rage inside of me and no one knew it.
While the cameras showed nothing but laughter, backstage things were much more tense. By 1974, Sanford and Son was a top-rated show, pulling millions of viewers every Friday night. But the success wasn't reflected in how its stars were treated by NBC.
Both actors going for a part. They cut his salary down $5,000. He was making $10K in Vegas. They started off, they paid me $1,200.
Red Fox, the powerhouse behind Fred Sanford, felt he was being underpaid. Even though he carried much of the show's weight, his salary was nowhere near the level of other television stars. Foxx compared his pay to Carol O'Connor, who was starring in All in the Family. O'Connor was making far more, even though Sanford and Son often matched his show in ratings.
Every year, Red would file, but he never, ever paid. And they called him down to the IRS offices, and he performed, and not in a nice, kind way. And then the trucks pulled up, and they took everything.
Foxx had enough. In 1974, during the show's third season, he walked off the set completely. He refused to continue unless NBC recognized his value. The walkout stunned fans and the network alike. For 6 episodes, Fred Sanford was written out of the storyline. The script explained his absence by saying Fred had gone to attend a cousin's funeral in St. Louis. This left Demond Wilson in a tough position. With Foxx gone, the entire burden of the show fell on him and the supporting cast. Viewers still tuned in, but the heart of the series was clearly missing. Fred and Lamont's chemistry was what made the show special, and without it, the energy was different. Behind the scenes, Wilson saw Fox's frustrations firsthand. He agreed that the network undervalued them both. In later interviews, Wilson recalled how he and Foxx felt exploited, believing NBC was profiting off their work while refusing to compensate them fairly. To Wilson, this was not just about money, it was about respect.
Real reason I left Sanford and Son, well, I've never said this before, and I know it's going to cause a lot of trouble, but the real reason I left Sanford and Son because those lousy bastards over there, they took and gave me no kind of money, no.
When Foxx finally returned, it was after NBC caved. The comedian secured $25,000 per episode, along with 25% of the producer's net profits. It was a victory, but the damage had already been done. The walkout revealed the fragile relationship between the network and its stars. For Wilson, the situation deepened his unease. He already felt uncomfortable with some of the scripts, and now he also had to deal with the reality that he and Foxx were fighting an uphill battle for fair treatment. The cracks behind the laughter were becoming harder to ignore. The walkout also marked a turning point in the working relationship between Wilson and Foxx. While they continued to perform together on screen, the tension with NBC lingered. Wilson began to see how unstable things could be in Hollywood, especially for black actors at a time when the industry still held tight control over creative power. Those behind-the-scenes battles shaped the rest of the series. From that point forward, Wilson never forgot how fragile the success of Sanford and Son really was. It was a show adored by millions, but the people at the center of it often felt disrespected and undervalued. Even after Red Fox returned to Sanford and Son, the fallout from the 1974 walkout lingered. The tension between him and NBC, and between him and some cast members, was palpable. For Demond Wilson, who had watched much of it unfold firsthand, the experience left lasting scars. Wilson later admitted that his relationship with Foxx became strained after the show ended. They had been a powerful duo on screen, but behind the scenes, disagreements, pressures from the network, and creative differences drove a wedge between them. Their friendship, which had started with mutual respect and shared goals, didn't survive the stress of the industry.
We want to have a meeting with Red Fox. His 50th anniversary in show business is coming up, and we want to produce it. Could you set it up? I said, well, I'm going to tell you something. I haven't spoken to Red in 5 years.
When Foxx passed away in 1991, Wilson made a controversial decision. He did not attend the funeral. He explained in interviews that while he respected Foxx's talent, their relationship had grown distant, and the unresolved tensions from the show's production were still there. Many fans were shocked, but Wilson remained firm in his choice.
Okay, well, what was your reaction when he passed away? He died on the set.
What do you mean?
He died on the set of his show. Well, he had the heart attack.
You gotta die somewhere, man.
The situation with Foxx was only one example of the challenges Wilson faced in Hollywood. He often spoke about how black actors at the time were exploited. Even when they starred in successful shows, they frequently lacked control over scripts, character development, and compensation. To Wilson, these were systemic issues, not personal failings. The aftermath also affected Wilson's own career choices. He began to see Hollywood as a place where personal integrity could be compromised for fame or money. The experience with Fox and NBC made him question the long-term value of staying in an industry that often prioritized profits over people. During interviews years later, Wilson reflected on how the pressures of the show contributed to his eventual decision to leave acting. He was proud of his work on Sanford and Son, but he was clear the environment behind the cameras was toxic at times, and he didn't want to be part of a system that treated talent unfairly. Fans have speculated about the exact nature of the rift, and while some conspiracy theories circulate online, Wilson has been consistent. Nothing is proven, but all evidence points toward unresolved creative and financial conflicts as the main cause. He has emphasized that his choice to step away from Hollywood wasn't about bitterness. It was about finding a place where he could align his work with his personal values. By the time Wilson left Hollywood, he had seen both the highs and lows of fame. He had starred in one of the most iconic shows of the 1970s, worked alongside a comedy legend, and entertained millions. But he had also experienced betrayal, tension, and disappointment elements that left a lasting mark on him.
I went in there and said, hey, if you don't pay me, I ain't coming back here. And they said, we'll see about that with your little cocky self. That's when I went to Vegas.
After leaving Hollywood, Demond Wilson made a life-changing decision. He chose to step away from the spotlight and dedicate himself to ministry. For Wilson, it wasn't about escaping his past. It was about aligning his work with his personal values. Acting in scenes that conflicted with his beliefs had already left a mark, and now he wanted a life that reflected his principles. Wilson became a full-time minister, preaching and teaching in churches across the country. His transition from sitcom star to spiritual leader surprised many fans, but for him, it was a natural step. He often said that the fame, money, and applause of Hollywood could never replace the peace he found in his faith.
Around me, I was living in a huge house behind gates, and I had cars and money, and then I said, why am I not happy? I know women are supposed to be happy, but I wasn't even content. I started to pray. I got on my knees and I started to pray. And it all opened up for me.
Even today, Wilson refuses to watch certain episodes of Sanford and Son, particularly scenes from 1972 that he felt were disrespectful or inauthentic. He has been clear, it's not about embarrassment or shame. It's about maintaining integrity. The moments he avoids are reminders of an industry that sometimes demanded compromise over truth. Despite avoiding those scenes, Wilson occasionally reflects on his career with pride. He recognizes that Sanford and Son broke barriers for Black actors, giving visibility to a family and community rarely seen on national television. He also acknowledges that, even with its flaws, the show brought laughter to millions and cemented his place in television history. Wilson's legacy is complicated, but it is also powerful. He demonstrates that success isn't only measured by fame or wealth, but also by personal integrity and the ability to walk away from situations that conflict with one's values. His story shows that even in the middle of controversy and tension, it is possible to choose a path that feels right. Fans still celebrate Sanford and Son, quoting lines from Fred and Lamont Sanford and sharing nostalgic clips online. Some fans think that Wilson's refusal to watch certain scenes makes him distant from his own legacy, but he sees it differently. To him, it's a conscious decision to honor the parts of his work and life that he can stand behind fully. Even though nothing is proven, all evidence suggests that Wilson's choices reflect a deep understanding of authenticity and personal responsibility. He continues to speak openly about his experiences, offering insight into both the triumphs and struggles of being a Black actor in 1970s Hollywood. Today, Demond Wilson's story is remembered not just for the laughter he brought into living rooms across America, but for the integrity he maintained despite pressure and compromise. Sanford and Son remains iconic, but Wilson's life reminds fans that sometimes the most important victories are not the ones seen on screen, they are the ones lived quietly, in alignment with one's principles.